They were an enviable family. Mr. Abhijit Sardesai was a high-rank officer in a multinational computer company. He had achieved this position at a very young age because of his meritorious academic record and hard work. They enjoyed many facilities. Good-natured and mischievous Abhijit, who was loved by one and all, had now matured into a composed person. Abhijit and me were close friends. Most of our likes and dislikes matched. We had almost a similar style of thinking. Abhijit was a bit cleverer than me though, and fortunate too. He would succeed promisingly in whatever he would venture into. I was lucky enough that he chose the field of computer science, leaving the field of psychology for me to pursue. After completing my post-graduation in psychology, I wrote my thesis on mental deliberations and communication vis-a-vis nervous system and complex brain structure. Abhijit's opinions on various points were very vulnerable and useful and hence of great help. After all, the topic of my thesis had to do something with the brain and its activities. And where else would one find a better rational and a sharp brain than that of Abhijit? Abhijit's wife, Anagha, was a perfect match. She was beautiful, intelligent, well-behaved and loving. All three of us were childhood friends. She worked as PRO in a travel company. She had a bright career ahead. Abhijit succeeded in continuing the childhood bonds with her and married her. After their marriage, she left the job for the sake of household responsibilities and to look after Abhijit and their family. She was a competent housewife as well. They had a 10-year-old sweet kid, Ankur. I had managed to remain a bachelor so far. The saying that marriages are made in heaven least affected me as I was happy being alone. Abhijit, Anagha and little Ankur lived in a double-bedroom flat in a suburb in Mumbai. Often on weekends, either they stayed with me in my small bungalow or else I would stay with them. Anagha would grumble all the time about the messy state of my bungalow and would always advise me to get married soon and have an orderly living. I used to laugh it off as a joke. I was better the way I was and doing fine anyway. I had a practice as a psychiatrist in the noisy and crowded city full of stress and strain. In addition, there were conferences, seminars, and my studies in the field of my liking. Abhijit's family had filled the remaining void in my life. It used to be great pleasure to play with little Ankur on holidays. Suddenly something disastrous happened that shattered Abhijit's family completely. I was away from India for the last 2 months to attend an international seminar for psychiatrists. The seminar was to be held in Geneva and was to last for 15 days. I was to present my paper in this conference. The points I was going to place before this conference were of common interest. It was going to be very interesting and would certainly prove very useful to me. Before leaving for Geneva, Abhijit was of great help in collecting references and in finalizing certain concepts. I could still remember his glowing face when he came to see me off. I saw a proud friend in him as I was boarding the plane. Apart from the conference, I was invited to deliver speeches on my papers at some European psychiatrist departments. I returned to India after 2 good long months. The conference was a great success. My papers were well received and were discussed elaborately in a number of meetings and forums. I gathered a lot of new experiences. I also had some fun and sightseeing in this tour. It proved to be very successful, enjoyable and a fulfilling tour. I was surprised and a little worried too not to find Abhijit at the airport. I called at his residence when I reached home. My worries enhanced hearing Anagha sobbing. So I immediately hung up and started for Abhijit's house. The atmosphere in his house looked disturbed and shattered. Ankur was not seen anywhere. She told me later that she had left him with his uncle. Anagha, what's the matter? Where is Abhijit? I asked. Still weeping, she just pointed to the bedroom. Abhijit was sleeping in the center of the double bed. There were saline bottles hanging above his head. A covered bedpan and urine pot were lying in one corner of the bedroom. Abhijit was covered with a shawl up to his neck. He seemed to be in deep sleep. His favorite perfume made the room a little tolerable. The room badly resembled an ICU of some hospital. Anagha was still not in a position to say anything. She handed the medical report files to me. I was stunned to see the first paper in the report, which was a medical certificate saying that Abhijit had gone into coma. The signatures and rubber stamps in the certificate proved its authenticity. I threw myself into the nearby chair and started studying the papers in the file. In a few moments, I had a clear picture of what might have actually happened. Bearing the fact of Abhijit going into coma, all that was stated in the report was familiar to me. It was, in fact, the topic of my study. But how is it possible, I thought. I started rereading the report. Anagha was completely shattered because of Abhijit's sudden and unexplainable condition. I tried to calm her down. Look, Anagha, we are here to help Abhijit. You have to gather the courage and control yourself. Now tell me, how and when did it all start? With a lot of efforts, Anagha started narrating. After you left for Geneva, Abhijit was busy with some of his office work for about 15 days at a stretch. He made some trips to your laboratory. He was working in his study the whole day and would come out only for lunch. Sometimes he would rest for a few hours in the bedroom, which is attached to his study. Many a times I saw him dozing in his chair. Since I knew his style of working, I did not bother or disturb him while working. I don't know exactly at what time, but once he came out of his study and slept in our bedroom, and he was asleep for 2 days. I thought strenuous work and sleepless nights must have had its toll, and so I let him sleep peacefully the first day. But I got worried when he continued to sleep the second day as well. I tried to wake him up, but in vain. At last I sprinkled water on his face, after which he stirred a little. The whole day he was restless and dizzy and had a heavy head. I immediately called Dr. Sane. I had read the events in the reports that had followed after Anagha had called Dr. Sane. Abhijit was given all possible medical aid. He was kept under observation in the hospital for a couple of weeks. A team of expert physicians and neurologists was attending him. Finally, he was diagnosed as a victim of a peculiar mental disorder, state of multiple convulsions and coma symptoms. The duration of this condition was in ascending order. Abhijit was in this present state for the last 12 days. The doctors declared that there was no cure to his sickness. It was only a matter of time and patience till he came out of this condition. He was to be fed and looked after as is done in the case of coma patients. I knew now what could be done. I entered Abhijit's study. There were many electronic gadgets scattered on his table. Some of them were familiar to me. There were stacks of files in the rack. I sat in the chair behind the table and started browsing through those. 2 of those files belonged to me. They were about my research work. I was immersed in deep thoughts while sipping the coffee which Anagha had brought in the meantime. She was fairly composed now. My presence assured her of Abhijit's well-being. Slowly, I began to understand the entire situation. A consistent chain of relevant possibilities about the events that had happened and caused Abhijit's present condition could now be figured by me. When I finished my post-graduation, I had an opportunity to visit some renowned institutes around the world. I was selected along with some other fresh graduates to accompany expert psychologists on a study tour. During this tour, I was fascinated by the brain machines which were developed by the scientists of the Neuroanatomical Research Center at San Francisco and the studies going on in the dream laboratories of the Medical Center at Brooklyn. I had read a lot about these brain machines before. These brain machines had proved very effective in intellectuals. Thoughts have a high degree of creative potentials. The thought process is more active and effective while in sleep. When awake, we are engrossed with various nagging social commitments, geographical limitations, and physical problems. This limits our thought process about any chosen events which can otherwise be done in the dreams that we see while sleeping. One does not have to do anything with the rest of the world while dreaming. The thought process during sleep has a vivid effect on our physical conditions. The movement of eyelids and eyeballs while sleeping, the stress and strain shown on the face, changes in the blood circulation, irregularity in the heartbeats, etc. are some of the signs of the physical effects that the active thought process causes in the sleep. One more aspect of the thoughts during sleep is that one can look at oneself rationally without any self-esteem or ego. One can analyze one's behavior or activities with an open mind. Could we control our brain in such potent state of mind? Could we manage the dreams that we see? What would be our mental and physical state under those conditions? Will it be possible to find solutions to many of our problems through the medium of dreams? Could we avoid awakening halfway between our dreams and enjoy the dreams fully? Could we monitor the dreams the way we like? Such questions prompted me with the idea of dream machine. After a long research, I was able to develop my dream machine like the brain machines I had seen in the Neuroanatomical Research Center. I had though not used this dream machine as yet. I thought it still needed some precautionary connections and alterations. I was also not very sure about the actual effect of this dream machine. What I expected from this machine was to use it for curing some chronic mental disorders. I was not really confident about its results. There could be some harmful side effects. And this is exactly what had happened to Abhijit. Abhijit had tried this dream machine out of curiosity in my absence. And it was now confirmed that the dream machine had a serious side effect. Once having known the reason for Abhijit's illness, I knew what to do now. The brain machine in my laboratory could do the miracle, get him back to normal health. It would, however, take long to bring him back to complete normalcy. But I was confident that the cure was sure. The treatment began to show positive results gradually. Anagha was in tears when Abhijit finally awoke from his long sleep for the first time and smiled at her. Without a word, she held both my hands and thanked me, sobbing. I had to struggle hard to calm her down and avoid any further embarrassment in that emotional situation. It took about 6 months for Abhijit to be back to his confident, self-assured and cheerful self. It was only then that I could know from him why and how he used my dream machine. It was not that difficult, Abhijit started on. I had access to your lab. It was not difficult for me to decode the secret reports and conclusions you had drawn from various experiments. If you remember it right, I was the one who assisted you in designing and building up the circuits for the dream machine. So, I had some idea about the purpose of this machine and its concept. Your machine needed some minor changes and developments. It took me 2 days to finish it successfully after you left. I found out the proper device to use this machine with, which you also had not been able to work out till then. So you will have to consider my name for sharing the patent rights for this dream machine, Abhijit said, winking with mischievous looks twinkling in his eyes. This was a sign that he was now completely cured. He had become himself again. I was fully satisfied only when I knew from Abhijit about the changes he had made in my dream machine and the operating system he had developed for using it. But I could really be assured about the success of my dream machine experiment only when I used it on myself. Very easy it was. Abhijit is a real genius. I was lying on the sofa fully satisfied and contented after a long time. I was sleeping continuously for 3 days, they said. The doctor's opinion was that I needed rest because of incessant hard work and extreme physical strain for the past 5 to 6 months, and also because of mental tensions and sleepless nights. Abhijit would regularly come to see me. Anagha was constantly sitting by my bedside and nursed like an angel. The happy family was together again. They were a real good and enviable family. No bad omen or premonition should befall their happiness. I did not want to be ominous for them. Even me. Now, does someone have to tell a psychiatrist like me that living in a world of dreams is like running after a mirage? Life without relationship is dry like a desert, and a mirage is the sole solace in a desert. You'll agree, right?